Hello and welcome to another episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. I'm Mike Evans.
And I'm David Price.
And I'm a bit nervous to ask what we're going to talk about on this week's episode because I actually already know and I don't really want to talk about it, but you can introduce it.
Yeah, it's the Quad ESL 63 One Thing Audio Electrostatic loudspeakers.
Yes, we've talked about electrostatic loudspeakers to death, and I think I know the reason why as well, because I think you enjoy my pain. I think you get some kind of sadistic kick out of every time you see me asking me how much of your quads cost you this week then, Mike.
So everyone at this point should Google the word Schadenfreude.
No, I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But I think I've probably got a really good idea.
Well, it's sort of, delight at others' misfortune.
Yes, yeah.
So
my daughter does this. Every time something bad happens to me, it's the only thing that really makes her laugh.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing, isn't it, that?
Well,
yeah.
I can just say to you, Mike, I'm so sad that this is all, how much are you into your ESL 63s now?
I just don't know. And I'm a bit nervous to say, just in case my wife watches and it's just this particular episode.
Or
of
your
Hi-Fi
accountant.
But I bought a pair, foolishly. I just sort of bought a pair from eBay, which were supposedly reconditioned.
Yes.
And they worked for about a week. And then I found a guy called Alan who works for One Thing Audio, based in Banbury, who I took them to, and he sort of, you know how car dealers, if you take a second-hand car into a car dealer and they kick the tyres and shake their head and sort of tut a lot, it was exactly the same experience with my electrostatics.
Yeah.
So, and Alan quite rightly said, they're knackered, mate. And then he did a really great effort to rebuild them on a budget.
Yeah.
But they were just clearly, beyond hope.
Yeah.
And then I took them back sort of 2 or 3 times, and every time I took them back, he said, "I don't want to try to repair them again. I'll sell you a new pair or a reconditioned pair, but I don't want to try and repair these." And I totally ignored him and just kept chucking good money at these bad speakers. And then the last time they went wrong, which was probably about 3 months ago now, I went back in despair and said, "Okay, I give up. Sell me a pair." And Alan said, we've got a pair here which we've reconditioned, and I don't know how. I'm not particularly technical with this, and I'm not sure how technical you are with the panels. These the flat panels in the electrostatics, but essentially they used a different type of glue this time, or spray or whatever it is which they put on the surface. And he said it's the first time they've used this particular type, and he said it's the best results he thinks they've ever had on the ESL 63s. And he played them to me, and I couldn't get over it. I mean, you always take the mickey because there's no bass. Yeah. And there was bass all of a sudden. Wow. There was this amazing, where's that come from sort of bass. Wow. I mean, they're quite magnificent. So here's my thing. Yes. Okay. When they work, properly. Yeah. I don't think there's another loudspeaker quite like them. I mean, they were designed, donkeys years ago now, and the challenges of the design of the 63s must have been astronomical, absolutely astronomical. But when they get it right, I mean, it's just they are stunning. They're absolutely stunning.
1985, I think the originals came out, didn't they?
Is that when they were? They started designing them in '63.
They did.
That was, but it took 22 years.
As you do.
We did. When we talked about them before, you said that's a heck of a long lunch break, which is really funny. But they're the thing about them is they're so unusual. Yeah. I mean, we've got at the moment in our room here where we are, we've got a pair of Wharfdale Super Lintons, which are really cool. But they are the epitome of a big box loudspeaker. Yep. They have their flaws, they have their problems because they've got a massive, great big cabinet to deal with. Yes. Now, if you could take the cabinet away, which is exactly what Quad were trying to do in the 60s, 70s, and up to 85, you've solved so many problems, haven't you? So many inherent problems. And it's just a totally different sound to anything you could ever hear. And I love them. I absolutely love them.
I know, Mike, because you've bankrupted yourself.
I have. And it's like drugs. It really is like drugs. You're you've had that high once. Yeah. And you want to get it again. But unfortunately, all the drugs which you buy are sort of cut with talcum powder or something, so it never actually works, and that's what my quads are like.
So, I'd just like to say, viewers, that Mike has never done drugs.
No, I haven't. So, but I would sort of imagine that's what it's like.
Yeah.
So
he's, if we're being honest, when we were kind of back in the 80s, we did quite a few pints of beer, didn't we?
Plenty of beer.
But Mike never got onto the hard stuff until he came across a pair of ESL 63s.
That's the worst drug I've ever had. Don't get addicted.
Talk about midlife crisis.
Just say no. Just say no.
So if only the Grange Hill gang had done a song about quad electrostatics,
yes, yeah,
then you may be a lot richer than you are now.
There's no maybe about it. No maybe about it. But I mean, at the moment, they are just absolutely singing. They're amazing. I've got to tell you as well. I had, thanks to you, I had an amplifier turn up yesterday. In fact, a pre and a power, which I immediately plugged into the ESL 63s, and they are, drum roll, what turned up?
33303.
33303. Thank you very much.
Quad
33303. They look really retro. They've still got sort of bits of orange on them from the old days. So of course I really wanted to see what the quad amps sounded like with the ESLs.
Yeah.
Really brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really brilliant. And we must do a riff on the quad amps.
Sure.
Because I think people would love to know how nice they are.
Yeah.
The only problem I've got, and you may be able to help me with this, is I need another 303, please. Because it's just
of course you do.
I need more power.
Okay.
I need more power.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, if I may, about the One Thing audio experience, which is kind of a little bit about where we're going with this riff. They're top guys. They're just top guys, and they're really knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And they're really. This is the refreshing bit. Unbelievably honest.
Yeah.
Especially when they're saying, we'll do our best, but don't hold your breath, sort of thing, and giving really good, honest advice, which I clearly didn't take the first 3 or 4 visits.
You were blinded by the concept.
Yes, I was, and Alan's got stacked 57s, ESL 57s, in a frame in his lounge, which is, he must have the world's most tolerant wife, because they're big and imposing, but they sound amazing.
Yep,
they sound absolutely amazing.
Can I just interrupt you?
Yeah,
for a
sorry.
Second? So, I don't worry, viewers. We'll be back with Mike on the psychiatrist chair in a minute.
Yeah, should have done this on lying down.
Couch. Yeah, but I just wanted to say. So, when I was editing Hi-Fi World, so it must have been 20+ years ago. Someone contacted me and said, "Do you want to listen to a pair of One Thing Audio ESL 57s?"
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, all right. And by then, I'd kind of listened to various different variants of the 57, restored by various different people and so on. Because basically, these days, if you get a 57, you're listening to a restoration of some sort.
You really are, yes.
So, and I had them, and I was a bit skeptical. And I'd just been doing regales, which are basically Australian, basically an Australian version of the Apogee ribbons. They were fantastic.
Yeah.
Really amazing speaker, and I was totally beguiled by these speakers. And I got the One Thing 57s out, plugged them in. It's like, oh my god, fantastic.
Yes.
And ended up keeping the One Thing 57s for 6 months.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you?
So, normally I just kick stuff out really fast, but these were lovely.
What do you think of electrostatic speakers in general?
I think they're great, but I think they're flawed.
Yes.
So, you've got, the brilliance of them is that, how can I say? So, I think electrostatic speakers tell you everything that's wrong with box loudspeakers.
Yes, that's really true.
So if you, so many of us are used to listening to box speakers, aren't we? So, and it's almost like our ears kind of retune themselves. It's like we run a kind of DSP, script or something in our brains, and we get used to the kind of boom, 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 bang, bang, bang sort of sound.
Yes.
And then you listen to good electrostatics, and there's basically no cabinet, and the attack transients are super fast because the diaphragms are really light.
Yeah.
And you don't get these terrible sound of different drive units with different kind of physical characteristics crossing over in that kind of way. So you suddenly realize that all of the box loudspeakers you've ever listened to, including the really good ones, are really flawed, don't you?
I find as well, if I turn the light out and listen to the electrostatics, sometimes it makes you feel quite nauseous, because you just don't know where the sound's coming from, and it's actually quite a weird feeling. They're quite big and imposing things, as you know. So when the light's on, it's obvious and you can see them. But as soon as you turn the light off, it's actually really disorientating. And their imagery, left, right, back to front, and high and low, is like whoa. It's freaky.
The radiating pattern of electrostatics is amazing. It's like if you throw a pebble into a pond that's still, and you get the kind of ripples kind of coming out. That's how they do it.
Yes, yeah.
And they do it so uniformly compared to any kind of standard moving coil box speaker. It's uncanny, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yeah.
And so to that end, I think you can very easily get hooked, can't you?
Yeah. I mean, the issue, of course, is they don't move all that much air. Which is always going to be an issue. I mean, we were listening to the Super Lintons earlier, and we played that song from the Police live in River Plate, which is Wrapped Around Your Finger live, and that moves so much air. And these speakers, these Lintons, are sort of, you can almost feel the air, coming off of them. Now, you never get that with the quads.
No.
But you get that clarity, which is amazing. But I have to say, I don't know what Alan and the guys at One Thing Audio have done, but with this new process, but we're getting some bass. We're genuinely getting some bass. I mean, it really is quite something.
Well, I think if electrostatics are done really well, so basically the panels themselves, and the electrostatic panels are basically a kind of mylar film. They're like it's almost cling film.
It's like cling film,
basically.
Yeah, it's just like cling film.
And it's sort of stretched over a frame. And if the physical robustness of that film and that frame and the kind of way that frame is bolted to the structure of the speaker itself, the kind of frame of the speaker itself, if that's all really good, then it can be amazing, can't it?
Yes,
But you've got to have perfectly done panels in a very rigid structure, which is then sat on the ground in a very rigid way.
And of course, the problem is that they've got to be big as well.
Yeah, they've got to be exactly.
Because they move such a small distance that you need a really, really big panel.
Exactly.
I'm sure I've said this before on Riff, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but I remember going to Alistair Robertson Aikman's house in Stenning, who owned SME, and in his listening room, and he had stacked ESLs.
Yeah.
And he had an acoustically transparent curtain, so he had this curtain so you couldn't actually see them. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, and it was mind blowing because you had that effect because when you can't see the speakers, you genuinely have no clue where the noise is coming from. And it just seemed to be coming from everywhere. He just launched his turntable then, which is why we went down there. The SME. Was it the SME 30?
Model 30,
Model 30, with the SME 5. Can't remember the cartridge. Loads of Krell amplifiers. And these stacked ESLs, which is quite a system. I'd love for you to have heard that. Actually, it was fascinating. What else have you listened to? Have you listened to any magnaplaners?
Yeah, I mean, I've done. I mean, this is a great question actually. So I really like magnaplaners, and but Martin Logan electrostatic moving. Coil hybrids are a very interesting thing.
Sure.
So ribbon speakers, obviously, like Maggie's, have got issues with the ribbons not being able to move much air. And that's maybe one for another episode of Hi-Fi Riff. But if we stick closer to the kind of quad electrostatic thing, so I've had some very good experiences with Martin Logan electrostatic moving coil hybrid. So basically, you've got a standard bass driver, 12-inch, 15-inch, or whatever, in a separate cabinet, and above that you've got a large electrostatic panel. And Martin Logans such as these, do sound fantastic. But the problem is the bass driver is slower and boomier than the than the main electrostatic panel.
Yes.
And I remember listening to Kate Bush's first album on a sort of 10 grand pair of Martin Logans, just absolutely being beguiled by the beautiful sound of her voice through the electrostatic panel.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the bass guitar going kind of boo, boo, boo.
Yes, yeah.
So, this is a while back, and they have got much better, actually. They're much more seamless now. But you've still got the kind of problem of physics where you're trying to link a big moving coil bass driver that sort of chuffs in and chuffs out with something with incredibly fast transients.
Yes, sure.
But which can't move much air.
Yes. Do you know what Quad's solution to that was?
That was
They said what you need to do is kick a cardboard box in time with the music. That's what they said. That's what they said in the 80s.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
basically, don't be so stupid. Yeah. Just enjoy the electrostatics, and they may not be the most bass-rich speaker, but what they do is stunning.
And I think that the people who worked at Quad then only listened to classical music.
They did. Yes.
So, drum and bass, I think, Mannix, Goldie, that kind of stuff was not really on their radar.
No, probably not. Probably not.
But yeah, so I mean,
could you imagine if it had been how big the electrostatics would be? They'd be sort of bigger than your house, wouldn't they?
Basically, you'd have to build, a wall, electrostatics into a wall. Yeah.
Excellent.
But, yeah. So I mean, viewers, I don't think Mike is completely mad. As a kind of sort of wannabe clinical psychologist,
that's a first.
Yeah, well, maybe he is, but not for this reason. So, yeah, on the psychoanalyzing Mike, he's just a guy who can't help himself. He loves electrostatics. He had very good experience at a formative age with ESL 57s, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
And I remember your 57s very nice.
They were really cool.
And you got them for about 10p.
Yeah, because they didn't work, and I rebuilt one of the panels. Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So I can understand your desire to get your 63s working, and your kind of absolute determination to get to where you are now. And and all that money you've wasted. I mean,
I know. I feel like I need some kind of return on my investment.
But now you've got an absolutely top-notch sounding pair of 63s, and even the non-One Thing audio. I mean, I always think the One Thing audio rebuilds are superb, but the sort of cooking 63s, I think, are great speakers. If they're well preserved and they're kind of properly working properly, and really kind of underrated as well, because so many quad bores go, oh yeah, it's a 57 or it's nothing, there's only one, and so on. I've heard fantastic results from standard 63s.
Yes.
So they are great speakers. They're very interesting, but they're never going to give you the kind of super high, fast and searing treble and the kind of punch in the chest from the bass, are they?
Sure. Well, I have to say, at the moment, mine are stunning.
Yeah.
I'm loving them.
Yeah.
They are absolutely amazing. They're actually working really well with the Quad 33303 preamp power.
Yeah.
So, watch this space. Should we continue this conversation down the Hi-Fi pub?
Yes, I think so.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
So,
and on that bombshell...
I'm confiscating Mike's credit card so he doesn't buy a second pair of One Thing 63s.
That means you'll have to buy the round. And on that bombshell, thank you so much for watching this rather unusual episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff, and we look forward to seeing you very much at the next one. Bye.
If you like to put, comments of sympathy to Mike, then just... put them below the video.
Or send a donation.
Cheers. Bye-bye.